Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Denzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Denzel. I hope everybody's having a great week. Can I just tell you how great of a day it was yesterday? Now, you should know regarding yesterday's show, this show, the Denzel Domain show that you're listening to right now, I had a little trouble getting it to market yesterday. I didn't talk about that during the show, but while I was recording it, the power went out. That's the first time that's happened in a long time. And I think I've explained to you that here in Florida, the power goes out here in Madeira Beach, I'm going to say once every 2 weeks. I'm not exaggerating. It doesn't stay off for a very long time. Sometimes it just goes out for a split second, comes back, and that's what happened yesterday. But I lived in Las Vegas for 13 and a half years. I think the power went out 3 times. So go figure that. So that was an interesting day, but you should know something that I keep bringing up this other show, and I feel that I can talk about the show on this show because it does play on Red State Talk Radio on the weekends. It's a non-political show that I do with my friend and co-host Melissa Bridges. It has to do with people who have disappeared. I think they're playing it on Red State Talk Radio on the Encore channel on Saturday nights. And I deeply appreciate them doing that. But it's a podcast, so we do it, and people can download it whenever they want. We just completely broke all of our records yesterday with our newest show. And so that was a really exciting time for myself and Melissa, and I hope that that show continues to succeed. Hope we can continue to break records from week to week to week. Now, that would really be something. So that was an interesting day yesterday. And also I went to the doctor yesterday. And I've had perfect vision for most of my life. But I think that right now I think my right eye is starting to give up the ghost a little bit. Starting to get a little astigmatism in it, which was going to happen sooner or later. I don't think I was going to make it to 85 years old with perfect vision. So that was going to the doctor and finding that out. So I have 20/20 vision in one eye and 20/25 vision in the bad one. Yeah, I know it really sucks. So it was all around unique day yesterday that I didn't have a chance to talk about when I did yesterday's show. But I urge you to find my other show on iTunes and Stitcher and Podomatic. Or you can just wait till this week and you can listen to it right here on Red State Talk Radio. Regarding today's show, got a lot to talk about. I want to start with the convention list. Now, I've gone through this convention list, and there have been a lot of talk out there about how it is a little lackluster, especially considering all of these connections that Donald Trump is supposed to have outside the world of politics. I went down through the list, and I think that I knew about half of the speakers, about half of them. And that includes the celebrities. There were a lot of, it says congressmen or something like that, and I've never heard of that congressman or congresswoman. And as you know, I do politics at least 5 days a week. Now, why they in particular are speaking, what makes them more these unknown, it's kind of a thing like you think you know all the Republicans in Congress, but then when you start reading a list of them, I've never heard of this person. I've never heard of that person. This is kind of what it was like when I was going down this list. Now, why they're speaking, I have no idea. Now, obviously, they can't let all 200-some Republican representatives speak, even if they wanted to. They can't let all 50-some Republican senators speak if they wanted to. No matter how popular the Republican nominee might be, you have to pick and choose. Why these particular politicians who I've never heard of got picked, I have no idea. Maybe it has to do with how much money they've raised for the party, maybe how close they are to Donald Trump. I'm just not sure. But I know me as a political guru went down through that list and only knew half the people, and it would be less than half if the celebrities weren't included. And that I should say that list did not, it includes also Trump family members. I think there were, how many? 4 or 5 people on the list with the last name Trump. I'm not going to get too crazy about that because I'd guess if it would have been Jeb Bush, then we would have seen a lot of Bushes on that list instead. Okay? That's just the way it goes. And in fact, maybe if you go back to 2004 with the convention, with George W. Bush running for re-election, there were quite a few, I believe, Bushes on the list. At least that's how I remember it from 12 years ago. So I'm not going to get too crazy about that, but I don't know them, and so I've heard of them, and I did not include them in the people who I know. So they would be in the people who are unknown. But that only adds like 4 or 5, and it takes me barely over the 50% number of people that I know. Now, the list is also notable for a lot of people who are coming nowhere near the convention. And see, this is the problem I see that we as Never Trump people have had for a while, is that once you start looking at those politicians who are staying away from Donald Trump, and I mean, you should know on this list who people who are going to speak. If you haven't seen it, Ted Cruz is on there. Scott Walker's on there. There are a few men or women on there. Joni Ernst is on there. Women who I respect. But of these people who are staying away from the convention, you know what? There are a bunch of people who maybe I wouldn't want to necessarily hang around with, even though I wouldn't go to the convention either. Lindsey Graham, not going to be there. John McCain, not going to be there. Mitt Romney, not going to be there. George W. Bush, not going to be there. And there are, of course, on the other hand, some people who are avoiding it for whatever reason. Even John Kasich, it's being held in his state, not going. Rob Portman, who's running for a re-election in Ohio as a senator, not going. He said he might try to stop in, but kind of a half-hearted quote that I read. That has to be particularly tough for any Republican in Ohio, right? Being that the convention is being held in Cleveland, to say that you're not going to go where Ohio's not that big of a state. I mean, how far can you actually be away from Cleveland, Ohio? Like 3-hour drive, maybe? 4-hour drive? And you say you can't make it? I mean, it's not like it's Florida, where if the convention were being held in Miami, if a representative or senator is from Tallahassee or Destin or Pensacola or Panama City Beach, that's like a 10-hour drive or something from the Panhandle, Florida, down the whole way to Miami. You can kind of, maybe they'd fly. You could say, oh, well, they'll fly, but they could say, well, that's a long trip. And it is. If you ever want to look at Florida, that is one long state. I've driven it a few times. Long. I thought driving across Pennsylvania for 5 hours was long. That's nothing compared to Florida. So, and of course, there are other senators like Murkowski from Alaska. She's not going. I saw her name included in that. And so I keep naming these people, and we as Never Trump people, these aren't exactly our types of people either. In fact, you could say that as far as some of those speakers who are going to appear, would rather hang around with some of them than a lot of the politicians who aren't going to be there. Doesn't change my mind, but this is the problem that you get into. And frankly, I think that this explains why Trump has had so much success, because at least somewhat in the political ranks, Donald Trump has the right enemies. Now, once again, as you know, not a big fan of Mitt Romney. I think he's a good guy, not conservative. John McCain, not a big fan of him, never have been, but he's surely better than Donald Trump in my world. George W. Bush, honorable man, not conservative. But I start going down this list, And a lot of regular Republicans start pointing at those people and saying, see, they're the reason the Democrats continue to win. They're the reason that Barack Obama got elected. And so they start thinking, well, hey, if they're not going to go to the convention, then maybe this Trump guy's on to something. It would be a lot easier for us Never Trump people if Ted Cruz didn't show up to the convention or Scott Walker didn't show up and some of these other people, but they're going to. They're going to. And they're going to give it a shot. I would say they're going to try to put lipstick on a pig, to use a horrible cliche. But overall, the list so far that we have is underwhelming compared to what Trump said he was going to deliver. Being that he is, once again, the last 15 years, what has he been most successful at? Not business. Not creating reliable businesses that are going to be around forever. You know what he's most famous for? A reality show. And he's had quite a few famous celebrities, well-known, not D-list celebrities. I mean, Gene Simmons was on Donald Trump's show. And as far as rock and rollers go, Gene Simmons is A-list. And Donald Trump also had some country stars on there, other people who might come to the convention to speak for him. None of those people are on this list. Antonio Sabato Jr. is on the list. Now, I don't think that he has been a thing since the 1990s. I think. So it's just a little hard to understand. I think this is, once again, one of those issues where Donald Trump overpromises and underdelivers. See, in the Ed Denso world, it's underpromise and overdeliver. It's kind of going back to Star Trek with Scotty. Says, oh, I can't fix that engine for 3 hours. He gets it done in 2. Well, he knows he can get it done in 2 hours, but he makes himself look better by saying that it can be done in 3 and then him cutting the repair time by a third. And I learned a lot of good lessons from Star Trek. I always say, well, can you do that, Ed? Well, I just don't know. I'm going to have to take a look at it. It's going to be a little tough. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking, of course I could do it, but I don't want to tell them that. I'm going to make myself look like a miracle worker by telling them it needs 2 hours and I'll get it done in an hour. All of you should be doing that in your life if you're not. So Mitch McConnell, though, I guess you could say there are a lot of politicians who are going to be at the convention who I wouldn't want to hang around with either. Mitch McConnell's going to be there. Paul Ryan's going to be there. They have to make an appearance. He heads up the Senate. The other guy heads up the House. I guess they have to go. No matter what all of these statements that have been made by the Trump cultists, that Mitch McConnell, hates Donald Trump and everything, that Donald Trump's gonna just run roughshod over him. Well, somebody in the Republican Party asked Mitch McConnell to show up, and he's gonna show up. Somebody asked Paul Ryan to show up, and he's gonna show up. And can I just say for the record, they could have the entire Swedish bikini team speaking at the Republican convention, and I still wouldn't show up just because it's in Cleveland. There's a Cleveland joke for you. Couldn't avoid that. As I've said, they should spell Cleveland Cleaveland, but it's just me. So we'll see. I mean, the convention, it's almost here. It is getting here a lot faster maybe than we anticipated. What is it, 9 days or something like that? Very, very fast. And it'll be interesting to do this show the day after or the night of whatever is happening to comment on it. Right now, I saw in the news that those delegates and the Never Trump, anti-Trump people are trying to get together. I guess they took a break shortly before I started recording this show. Wonder how that's going. I, of course, hope they hold out. I'm not so sure that's going to happen. As you know, I'm a cynic. I'm a realist. That I know a lot of these Never Trump people, when it comes to November, are going to go and vote for Donald Trump anyway. I'm not. And I know a lot of people like myself aren't, but I know that there's going to be a high percentage of people who currently are on Twitter saying Never Trump that are going to go vote for him. Just like I know regarding this convention that a lot of people are going to go into it saying they're going to vote against Donald Trump, and they're going to. That's just the way people are. And I try not to hold that against them. I'd like for them to keep their word, but my expectations never get that high. People, adults, just as well as children, succumb to peer pressure. They let fear and other things determine their decision instead of just going with what they know is right. That's the reason the world is in the way it is. A lot of problems out there, all because people can't make the right decision. Moving on, I saw something here that was fairly hilarious, and I got this from hotair.com. More and more rumors regarding who Trump is going to pick for his vice president. Mike Pence, Newt Gingrich, this Flynn guy from the military, an admiral or general. And Ann Coulter, haven't talked about her in a while. I don't know if she's been lying low. I don't have TV. Maybe she's on Fox News every day. I have no idea. I read a series of tweets, and it doesn't seem to her to me, that she likes any of the possibilities of who Trump might pick. Doesn't like Mike Pence, doesn't like Newt, doesn't like Flynn. And in fact, she went as far to say that Donald Trump would be better off picking Charles Barkley for vice president over those three guys. And in fact, she went as far as to say, how is he going to pick Newt and then give Hillary a hard time about Black Lives Matter, immigration, and global warming? Now, see, stuff like this is crazy to me. Stuff like this is crazy. Anne, I know that you've made a lot of money selling a lot of books over the years. Way more money talking about politics, writing about politics than probably I will ever make. And I want you to know I'm fine with that. But maybe you need to be clued in on something. It's funny how quickly you forget. You know what's going to keep Donald Trump from giving a hard time to Hillary Clinton about that stuff? It's not Newt Gingrich. It's not Mike Pence. It's not Flynn. It's, I want to know, Admiral or General Flynn or Charles Barkley. It's Donald Trump himself that's going to get in the way of Donald Trump giving Hillary a hard time about this. Because you know what? Donald Trump believes in global warming. Or haven't you heard all of those statements that he's made? We have this thing called the internet. Nothing ever dies. Videos just pop up out of nowhere from the 90s and the early 2000s. Donald Trump is a believer in global warming, Ann Coulter. I can't help it that you haven't figured that out. All right? Along with immigration, Donald Trump loves illegal immigration. You know how I know? Because I know that he uses workers at his properties around the United States. He uses them at all of these places, golf courses and elsewhere. And you believed he was actually going to build a wall. As far as Black Lives Matter go, Donald Trump, once again, I'm not so sure. I know what he said recently. I'm not sure that matters. The truth is, I think that Donald Trump agrees a lot with Barack Obama in regards to violence and terrorism and everything else. Well, how do I know that? Because I know that Donald Trump was a fan of Barack Obama when Barack Obama got elected in 2008. And then suddenly, a few years later, he's giving Barack Obama a hard time about his birth certificate. Why? Not because Donald Trump believes it, but because Donald Trump wants attention. That you can't see that is weird to me. I love using that saying. It's weird to me. I say that a lot in this show, I'm starting to realize. Likewise, Anne, maybe, see, this is kind of like, and I used this analogy regarding Barack Obama once. Maybe it was when I started on Red State Talk Radio. Maybe it was before that. That Barack Obama and Donald Trump are like that hot boyfriend that you women have. You see him somewhere, he notices you, he gives you attention, you like him back, you start dating, and you think everything's going to be perfect because he looks good. And then tough times start. Maybe your mother goes into the hospital. Maybe your car breaks down. Maybe you lose your job. And then suddenly you find out that good-looking boyfriend that you had all these high hopes in, just because, once again, he looks good, isn't with you through those tough times. And it feels to me like Ann Coulter is in a little bit of denial right now. Just like women would be, because women can be motivated by looks just like men can. That they start to rationalize. Well, what's he supposed to do that my mother... he's not a doctor. He can't help her, but he's not calling me. Maybe he just feels a little awkward, and we've all been there. Something bad happens, and then suddenly he's not picking up the phone. He's not answering your texts. He's not tweeting you back. He's not responding to you on Facebook. It's not that he doesn't still like you, but he only likes you when things are going smooth in your life. Maybe only when he can be the center of attention. It's very possible. But when things get tough and you call him at 2 in the morning because your car broke down, he's going to say, well, you know what? I got to get up for work in the morning. I'm sorry. This just feels like there's a little teeny bit of that going on with Ann Coulter. Maybe when she goes to bed at night and staring at the ceiling, all this stuff runs through her mind, and she starts looking at these vice presidential pics, and she starts saying, Whereas for the last almost year, those of us have been trying to tell her, Laura Ingraham, and others that they are dating that hot boyfriend who is eventually going to let them down in tough times. It's just going to happen. I don't know what to tell her. So it's just funny that she would go on Twitter and be so vocal about it. When I think a lot of people, now granted, a lot of people don't care about that stuff. And those are the people that are willing to vote against Hillary just because. They don't care that Trump may be lax on immigration or lax on global warming or anything else. They just don't want to see Hillary Clinton in office. There's a large group of people like that. But the group that has been so fooled is the Ann Coulter group. If she's going to continue to say this, she's making herself look like an idiot, and I'm not so sure she realizes it. To be so obvious about it. I could see her talking to maybe some couple personal friends about these vice presidential picks. Hey, Ann, these vice presidential picks, like it or not, are going to be a direct reflection on who Donald Trump really is. Just like I've tried to tell you that that Katrina Pearson chick is a direct reflection on Donald Trump. And Corey Lewandowski is a reflection on Donald Trump. And Trump University is a reflection on Donald Trump. But see, you ignored all of that. Now it's too late to ignore that. I don't know what to tell you. But it's funny on top of all this that we maybe a couple weeks ago, was it a couple weeks ago, that there was this rumor out there that Donald Trump wanted to was going to ask Condi Rice to be his vice presidential pick. This news has once again shown up again. I'm not a fan of Condoleezza Rice. I think she's a perfectly fine woman. But I read enough of the George W. Bush era books to think that, I don't know. I'm not going to say that she was in over her head. I don't necessarily believe that. She was just wrong. I think in the George W. Bush administration, it came down, you were either on the Dick Cheney side or the Condoleezza Rice side, especially in the second term. And Dick Cheney, for the most part, is going to win my vote every time in that selection. Once again, just reading those books and people making their arguments about what happened during the George W. Bush years. And I've read a few, not recently. So that sticks with me. But I think that rumor keeps popping up. Isn't it doesn't it appear then that Donald Trump seems to think, and his people seem to think, that he has a woman problem and maybe a minority problem? Maybe to a little lesser extent that he has a conservative problem. I really don't know how conservative Condoleezza Rice is. I know she's not as conservative as I am. I don't know what her conservative review rating would be. So, but that name keeps popping up, and there was just a few weeks ago that Joni Ernst's name has popped up. Isn't this just a direct reflection that he knows he has a woman problem, even though he says that he doesn't, and everybody's going to vote for him? I mean, you listen to Donald Trump, every single person in the United States is going to vote for him this November. Also on the vice presidential race, there was this video that is not... You wonder how these videos stay underground for all this long, then pop up at just the right times. Who's ever doing this, it fascinates me. There was a speech that Newt Gingrich gave in February. Of course, this was when the primary season, the voting actually was just starting to happen. Newt Gingrich was somewhere, and within just this short speech that he gave, I think it was like a half hour, and he devoted about 10 minutes of it to Donald Trump, he said everything pretty much that is true about Donald Trump. He's all marketing. He speaks at a fourth grade level. Newt Gingrich says that he's pretty sure that Donald Trump doesn't even know what a Donald Trump presidency would look like. That's absolutely true. And that's why it's so bizarre to me that so many people out here in the proletariat out here seems to know what a Trump presidency is going to be like, when it's pretty obvious that Donald Trump doesn't even know, because he flip-flops on so many things. This also could be, and I'm going to guess, although I'm just finding out about this Newt Gingrich video today, I'm going to guess that Donald Trump's people have known about it for a long time. And then doesn't that make the possibility of a Newt Gingrich vice presidential pick fairly remote? Makes it fairly remote, I think. And all of this, and probably the Trump people have known about this for a long time. You would think there had to be at least one pro-Trump person in that audience who had connections to the campaign, and the word got back, hey, Newt Gingrich really lambasted you in this speech he gave. But still, what's Donald Trump do? He uses Newt Gingrich to try to get in with conservatives. And now that we all know about this video, that surely it's a video that Donald Trump has known about for a couple months, you now see that he's been probably scamming us, not me because I'm not voting for him, scamming people on that for a long time. Knowing that he's not going to use Newt Gingrich because of what Newt Gingrich said about him in February. But Newt Gingrich, because he likes the attention, is willing to play along and appear with Donald Trump because then that helps him sell books and get on more shows and everything. Even though Donald Trump, in the back of his mind, says there's no way I'm making him my vice president. But it helps me get more votes if people think I'm going to pick Newt because they don't know that he gave this speech back in February making fun of me. And with all of that, you can start to understand who Donald Trump really is. Of course, I've known about this for a long time. I'm sorry you're just finding out right now. But I got to go to the break. You've been listening to The Denzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
The voice of American conservatism. WRS Digital, Red State Talk Radio.
And we're back at The Denzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I want to continue to talk about the vice presidential possibilities, but I'm going to move on to another guy, Mike Pence. I'll have to admit, I have not done a lot of research on him. I can only take for granted what other people say about him. I'm going to trust these other places, these other people who I've read for years, what they've said about him. And I get this from conservativereview.com. And once you see his resume that he was actually a Democrat at one time and did campaigning for Jimmy Carter in 1980. You talk about being on the wrong side in the wrong year. And then he's done some conservative things, had a good conservative union rating at one time, but it steadily decreased. He's not very tough on immigration, and that should be a red flag to all of you Donald Trump people. And of course, I should say, maybe start this out, that the reason we're talking about him is he's not on that list of people who are going to speak. And a lot of people have read into that and said that that's going to be Donald Trump's pick. It would be a kind of unique situation in that Mike Pence did not endorse Donald Trump in Indiana when Indiana came up for voting in early April. In fact, you'll remember that Mike Pence endorsed Ted Cruz. Of course, he endorsed him in the weakest way possible. But now there's a possibility that he might be Donald Trump's presidential pick. And I have to be honest that this is kind of the way that I saw that it would go, that he would not... Donald Trump, there's no way he's going to pick a true conservative. In fact, he's going to pick somebody like himself, who's a little bit all over the board. In addition, Mike Pence has a reputation of being a yes man. Maybe that's why he did what he did for Ted Cruz in April. And there's a whole list of reasons that conservatives shouldn't like Mike Pence. And it also shows, I think, that Donald Trump is not going to try to woo conservatives. As I've told you for a long time, I don't think he likes conservatives. Ideology is a little bit too confining for Donald Trump. His ideology is, first, it's all about me. Second of all, I'm only going to say, I'm going to side with whatever side is going to make me look better. And that's how too many people, not just Donald Trump, but too many people on all walks of life get in trouble. My personal opinion is you have to have theories about way the world works and make judgments and choices based on those theories, not on what necessarily you want and what makes you feel good. Donald Trump doesn't believe that. He just doesn't. And so he's going to choose somebody who seems to be all over the board as well and says things and does things just to fit the circumstances at that particular time. This is kind of way that Mike Pence sounds to me, even though, once again, I don't know him, have not researched him. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of Mike Pence lovers out there who've been following him for years and years and years, and they're going to say, well, he had this conservative think tank in the early 90s, and yeah, I know. But he's just squirrely enough that he would surely never be my vice presidential pick. And you could say, despite all of you Trump people hating him, that Paul Ryan is surely a more conservative than Mike Pence is. Surely. Despite all of you not liking Mitt Romney. And I think this is another point that, in fact, Ann Coulter mentions Mike Pence in her tweeting. That the Mike Pence pick does not excite Ann Coulter at all. I'm not surprised that he might be the pick, and it does surprise her, I think. That just shows you, I'm telling you, Ed Denzel has a firmer grasp of what's going on in this world than Ann Coulter does. Even though she's the famous one, and I'm not. There's also the point that has been made, although it's not, I don't think it's mentioned in the Conservative Review article from today, but I think read this yesterday or the day before, that the reason that Mike Pence isn't running away from Donald Trump like other moderate Republicans, I mentioned them before, John McCain and Lindsey Graham, is because Mike Pence, he's up for re-election this year in Indiana, and there's a pretty good chance he couldn't even get reelected in his own state. And him choosing to be vice president might give him an opportunity to get out of that predicament. So Donald Trump has the chance of picking a governor who couldn't even get reelected in his own state. This once again falls right in line with how I view Donald Trump. He's going to pick somebody that he can blackmail. Well, I'm going to pick you. You can go and run for re-election, and we know how those numbers are looking, or you can join me, and because I'm so tremendous. Do you really want to lose in your state? Meanwhile, I'm going to win the presidency. You're going to lose in your state. You could have been a winner being with me as vice president, so you go and do what you want. But Mike Pence, because I'm sure he continues to have political ambitions, just like most politicians do, he wants to remain in the game, and he knows if he gets canned as governor of Iowa or governor of Indiana, that his chances of maybe being president or being in a cabinet position in a future Republican presidency go right into the toilet. Remember, politics doesn't like losers. You lose an election, it's going to be tough. There's very, very few instances where a politician has lost a major election and then come back later to attain higher status. Richard Nixon may be one of the few. Lost the presidential election in 1960, got passed over in 64, won in 68. So, Mike Pence, I'm sure, knows that. So he may accept it just for that very reason alone. Not thrilled with being Donald Trump's vice president, but he wants to do it for his own preservation. And is that the kind of person that you really want as vice president, who's one heartbeat away from being in the White House? No matter what his political positions are. That doesn't sound like a kind of person I would want. The nice thing about Dick Cheney, of course, it was a positive and a negative, is that the positive about Dick Cheney when he was vice president is he was very vocal. I have no interest in being president of the United States. I have no interest in running for president of the United States. He's very forthright regarding that. He's probably one of the few vice presidents in recent history that has had that attitude. Of course, that hurt the Republicans in 2008, at least a little bit. Most of the time, you have the vice president running, like Bush 41 did in 1988, like Al Gore did in 2000. Now, this is another unique year that Joe Biden chose not to run, probably because of Hillary Clinton. And dare I say it, if Joe Biden had chosen to run, and it was still Donald Trump on the Republican side, I think this election would already be over. I think Joe Biden would clean up. I can't, it's one of those things. You always can rely on the adversary to make mistakes too. So Mike Pence, nothing but a social climber, not conservative, could lose in his home state of Indiana, a state that tends to go Republican, although it went for Barack Obama in 2008. It came back to Republican ranks in 2012. Donald Trump picks losers. What can I tell you? Katrina Pearson, loser. Corey Lewandowski, loser. All of these other business choices and people choices that he makes, losers. These people he puts in these positions. He has to do that because of his ego. Now, there's another person who's not on any list, at least so far. And this is going to keep, I'm sure, the paparazzi and the rumor mill going, the grapevine going, is that Sarah Palin is not on the convention list right now either. Which is, I don't know what to think about that. Would she not be invited? I don't know. Maybe she might not get invited because, being that she called me a traitor about 3 weeks ago. Don't worry, Sarah. I don't take it personally. I can't help it. You're just a political hack now. I don't take it personally. You're not a person with character anymore, so I don't worry about what you say about me. But it could be that she's not going to be on the convention list because of those things that she has been saying. Possible. None of these other people who I've seen on this list are going to get up on the at the podium and make fun of Never Trump people. I don't think that's going to happen. Whereas Sarah Palin just might. And she seems to become more unhinged at every speech that she does. So that may be the reason that may just by that time may be bringing up old wounds that might be healed by that time. We don't know where all of this delicate count is going to go. However, on the other hand, the reason she may not be on the list is because Donald Trump is thinking about making her his vice presidential pick, like John McCain did in 2008. Now, that would be interesting. John McCain doesn't want to have anything to do with Donald Trump, doesn't want to go to the convention, but his vice presidential pick will choose to be with Donald Trump. It's just like Peyton Place in the Republican Party right now. Who's sleeping with who? Who's joining up with who? Who's making a clique with who? So there's that. I think that Donald Trump, I read before I started this show, that he's going to announce his vice presidential pick tomorrow at 11 o'clock Eastern. On Friday, tomorrow. I'll be there. I'll be listening. Who knows who it's going to be? Because Donald Trump just yesterday said that he had a couple people that he has in mind, but then 2 secret people that nobody knows about. And in fact, this past weekend, I should be honest, that this friend of mine that I always talk politics with said to me, what if Donald Trump makes his wife his vice presidential pick? Hey, I would not rule out anything with this guy. I would not rule it out. And I should tell you, if he gets elected president, I think he gets impeached. I can't rule it. You can't rule anything out, and that's what makes this all so dangerous. Because I think a lot of people have already convinced themselves that they know how it's going to go, and they think it's just, the people on the left think that Donald Trump is going to create a lot of problems for them. The people on the right think, too many of them think that it's going to be just great. And dare I say it, I think it's going to be horrible for everybody. I think it's going to be horrible for people on the right. It's going to be horrible for people on the left. But it's going to be fantastic for Donald Trump. Let's move on to something else. Barack Obama yesterday, the days seem to run together, and yesterday, day before, did he really make the statement that it's easier for someone to buy a Glock than a book, or a child to buy a Glock than a book? I have a little experience buying Glocks. In fact, I'm going to be going shooting today. I should have mentioned that. I haven't gone shooting in a while. I'm going to go with my friend Carla. She's a big gun enthusiast like I am now. I'm a new gun enthusiast, and she's been a gun enthusiast for a long time, I think. We're going to go shoot. She has a Beretta, very nice gun, and I'll bring my Glock 19, and we're going to go try a new firing range today, a shooting range today. Before we go to trivia, we're on a trivia team together as well. Looking forward. I haven't gone shooting for a couple months, and we'll see how that goes. So I know a little bit about buying a Glock, and you should know that I have no criminal record. I bought my Glock at Bill's World. Is it called World of Adventure? Right here over there in Pinellas Park. Bought it, had to wait the 3 days from a background check. Of course, it came back clean. Picked up my gun, and it's been fantastic ever since. I take it with me everywhere. It's fantastic. I took it over to Daytona Beach for the tournament last weekend and had that sitting right there when I stayed in my hotel, sitting right there on the bedstand. Somebody who was going to break down that door was going to be in a heap of trouble. They came in. So I know a little bit about buying a Glock. And you know what? I know a lot about buying books, too. In fact, I write them. So I even know more about buying books. And I can assure you, Barack Obama, that buying a book is a lot easier than buying a Glock. In fact, buying a book is easier than buying any gun in the world. Whether it's a real book or an ebook. Because right now, if I wanted to test it and I wanted to go buy another gun or wanted to buy a book, I could go to my Kindle. I could download a book in less than 30 seconds. I would be hard-pressed to buy a gun in less than 30 seconds. Or I could drive to a good old-fashioned brick-and-mortar bookstore and be in and out of there in 5 minutes. I am sure I could not go to any gun store in Florida and buy a gun in less than 5 minutes. Even if I went in and just wanted another Glock 19, a gun I already know everything about. Couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. In addition, if I wanted to go buy some gun on the street, quote-unquote, illegally, as a gun owner and as a guy who has taken interest in Florida's gun laws and what it takes to buy a gun, I wouldn't even know where to start to buy a gun, quote-unquote, illegally. However, I am sure that I could go next door to my neighbor and said, hey, you have any books? And they'd probably say yes. Can I see them? I'd like to buy one. I'm sure that I could buy one of my neighbor's books in less than 5 minutes. Whereas if I went over to my neighbor and said, you know what, I'd like to buy your gun, I think that my next door neighbor might put up a little bit of resistance. I think. what this all shows is, see, the problem that we as conservatives and gun owners and gun lovers and Second Amendment lovers have is that I don't think we totally understand how clueless liberals are about guns, the gun market, how they work, why the difference between 9mm and 45 ACP, the difference between automatic and semi-automatic, the difference between a rifle or a bullpup or a revolver or a semi-automatic. It's becoming more and more obvious they don't know anything about anything, but they act like they do, which pretty much is par for the course for liberals. They go on and on about guns, and you just scratch the surface with them, and you realize they don't know anything about anything. They've never gone to purchase one. They've never fired one. If you put a bunch of bullets on a desk, they couldn't tell the difference between a .22 and a .357 cartridge. They couldn't tell you the difference between a striker-fired gun and a hammer, a semi-automatic with a hammer. They couldn't tell you that Glocks have the safety on the trigger, whereas a 1911 has it on the slide. Couldn't tell you any of that. So, but then we want to have and 911s do have, Berettas, I was thinking of Berettas too. They're the same way, I think. So, there's all these differences between all these different guns, and they don't know anything about any of them. But they'll go on and telling us all about how guns are dangerous and how people shoot themselves by accident. And if you drop a gun on the ground, it's going to go off. But Barack Obama believes that Glocks are easier to buy than books. Being that I've bought both, here's what I know. Barack Obama's never bought a Glock. I'm sure he's bought several books. I don't know if he's read them. So I have more experience with guns and books than Barack Obama has with guns and books. And I'm telling you, he's wrong. But liberals will believe him simply because they've never bought guns either. But they've bought a ton of books, once again, probably ones that they never read. They just put it on the bookshelf to make themselves look smart. But this is something, Barack Obama is not the first politician or liberal leader to make this kind of statement. Whether it is a child or an adult, it's very difficult to go out in the street and buy a gun. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. And but you know who buys guns on, quote unquote, on the street? Criminals do. Criminals do. Criminals sell guns to other criminals. Law-abiding citizens don't sell guns illegally. They don't sell them to suspicious characters, to people they don't know. But listening to Barack Obama, he just wants to throw every person who wants to own a gun into the same pile. And what he's going to do, he's getting probably a lot of people killed. Maybe he should look at the shooting statistics in his hometown of Chicago for this year. They are incredible. Did I see that is this true? That over 1,000 people have been shot, all of them died, but over 1,000 people have been shot in Chicago up to this point this year? Did I read that correctly? Over 1,000? That's crazy. It's crazy. But you know what it is? A bunch of illegal guns in a bunch of liberals' hands shooting each other. We should just keep guns out of liberals' hands and it would all be fixed. forever. Maybe they should continue to not know about guns, and we shouldn't allow them to have them. We as conservatives, we'll stock up. But I got to go. You can go to edwarddenzel.com, find my old Red State Talk Radio shows, Podomatic, Podbean, SoundCloud, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Email me, edwarddenzel@reagan.com, Twitter, Denzel Domain. Talked about my other show, Breaking All the Records, America's Missing Podcast. Please check it out on Podomatic, iTunes. Please subscribe. My books are out on back on Amazon again. Just do a search for Edward Denzel. You can find them. Love you to buy a couple of those as well. They're cheap. Don't worry about it. But it's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. You've been listening to the Denzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.